Many people around the world have been turning towards non-violence as a way to confront problems. In one particular story, Loretta Castro talks about her experience in protests in the Philippines. Towards the end, she says,
"In the few days that followed, more and more people poured into the area surrounding the camp, in a massive non-violent demonstration against the Marcos dictatorship and involved about 2 million people. It was amazing to experience the non-violent actions that were taken by the people who were there. We were giving food and flowers to the loyalist soldiers instead of throwing stones at them. We were praying and singing, and carried with the symbols of our faith. We all disobeyed the curfew that was imposed by Marcos so that the people would be off the streets. There were those who made their bodies the barricade to stop the loyalist tanks from proceeding to the camp to attack those who were holed up there. There was non-violent persuasion as demonstrators shouted these messages to the loyalist military personnel who were advancing to the camp. In Filipino, they said, 'Join us, let us not fight each other, we are all Filipino.' On the 25th of February, Marcos and his family left the Philippines.
This is one of the many success stories of non-violent resistance, and to further explore this, we will be talking about Rosa Parks and Mahatma Gandhi as a way to understand what makes non-violent resistance so powerful.
Born in 1869 in India, Mahatma Gandhi was a revolutionary figure in non-violent resistance. Part of why Gandhi thought the way he did was because his father was a chief minister and his mother was deeply religious. Growing up in Hinduism taught him about the value of non-violence, peace and meditation, which he proceeded to use for the rest of his life and teach to people along the way. Gandhi did not spend his entire life in India. He studied law in London and worked in South Africa, which was where he first encountered racism against Indian immigrants. After spending a while leading resistance against discrimination in South Africa, he returned to India to help combat problems in his home country. One of the main things he supported was Indian independence from the British Empire and encouraged others to use non-violent resistance to protest against the British government. In the article, Gandhi's Power Over Hindu Millions Almost Unlimited, the author says, "Still alive, still going strong, armed with neither a potent pen, a golden scepter or a powerful lethal weapon. He is enshrined in the hearts of the majority of the 35 million brown people who seethe in the towns and villages and farms of the vast subcontinent of India." This shows how sometimes less is more when it comes to non-violent resistance, and Gandhi was sure to show that sometimes the biggest changes don't have to come from fighting. Another reason why Gandhi was so powerful was because he lived a very simple life. A lot of people in India could relate to him, therefore, they had a stronger bond and would follow in his footsteps. After being imprisoned multiple times, fasting repeatedly and leading peaceful protests, Gandhi was assassinated in 1948 before he could ever see India as an independent country. One of Gandhi's greatest acts was the Salt March in 1930. This protest consisted of Gandhi and his followers walking 240 miles to retrieve his own salt to defy the salt tax which the British government put on India. He aimed to educate and increase understanding about national policies and slowly pull away from the British Empire. He was able to gather 12,000 followers by the end of his journey. Gandhi's tactic was genius because using something as simple as salt would prove how ridiculous our laws and taxes were, and people became more and more hopeful about independence. Some of the reasons why Gandhi was so influential was because he had the right characteristics to lead non-violent resistance. He was a small, frail, elderly man who was highly religious. This is important because throwing a man like him in jail would cause a lot of anger to people around the world, since it's hard to imagine him being guilty. That is exactly what happened, and sometimes they were forced to release him from prison because of all the negative attention. Another important thing about Gandhi was that he studied law and lived abroad. Being well educated helps him fight for the rights of everyone because he understands politics and law well and can use it to their advantage. In addition, having international experience can mean he gained unique ideas and tactics to fight discrimination and other issues at home. Gandhi had quite a legacy before and after he died. He was able to capture the attention of many world leaders, which put pressure on the British government to grant independence. After he was assassinated, those leaders had to start thinking about how they could carry on his ideals and continue to use non-violent resistance the way he did. As well as that, He increased the use of non-violence, and the National Congress of India recognized satyagraha, non-violent protest, as their principal strategy.
Born in 1913, Rosa Parks is the lady known as the mother of the civil rights movement. Growing up in a segregated USA, Rosa Parks was well aware of the inequalities that white people had placed upon her race. Her first interactions with the NAACP began in 1932, when she married Raymond Parks, who was a member of the NAACP at that time. 1 year later, Rosa Parks finished her high school studies. However, it is not until 1943 when she would become an active member in the civil rights movement. In that same year, she would become secretary for the NAACP. During her service, she has worked on many cases and has achieved many feats, the most famous one being her nonviolent resistance in 1955. The reason why she began the Montgomery bus boycott was because she was loved and respected by the whole community. According to The Power of Habit, written by Charles Duhigg, studies show that people have no problem ignoring strangers' injuries, but when a friend is insulted, people's sense of outrage is enough to overcome the inertia that usually makes protests hard to organize. 222. This meant that if Rosa Parks became a figurehead for the protest, every close friend would come to her aid. In this case, almost all of the black population in Montgomery was close to her. This shows how using nonviolent resistance can unite tons of people to protest for their rights. Sadly, 2 years later, she and Raymond had to move to Detroit after being fired from their second job and being unable to find work, as well as receiving constant death threats. After that, she became a secretary for John Conyers until her retirement in 1988. She was still active in trying to decrease segregation within the USA. Throughout her last years, she earned tons of rewards and recognition for what she has done for the USA. She unfortunately passed away on October 24, 2005. Rosa Parks is renowned for being the spark that began the Montgomery bus boycott. On December 1, 1955, Rosa Parks refused to follow the driver's orders, which were to give up her seat so a white man could sit. The police were called, and she was arrested. 4 days after her arrest, the protest began, led by Martin Luther King Jr. Supposedly, the protest was going to last for 1 day, but somehow the leaders behind the protest and the protesters managed to make it last a whole year. This protest, like Gandhi's Salt March, also proves that segregational laws are ridiculous by using something as simple as a seat. Rosa Parks was the ideal person to start the Montgomery bus boycott because she was respected by the whole community. The respect the community has for her is a huge factor because people are more inclined to help out someone they respect. Another factor that is important is that she is harmless. Compared to the other people that have done the same thing, Rosa Parks seems friendlier and harmless, so the arrest seems even more ridiculous than it already is. The final reason that Rosa Parks was the ideal person is because she has many close connections to the NAACP. This meant that it would be easier for the organization to stage her as an idol for the boycott. Rosa Parks gained a lot of awards for what she has done in order to decrease segregation in the USA. She managed to be a rally point for the Montgomery bus boycott, which in turn desegregated the buses. She also has helped desegregate the US through her work. Because of her work, she is now recognized as a historical figure.
After analyzing Rosa Parks and Mahatma Gandhi as leaders, it's apparent that leaders of a non-violent protest are most effective when they are liked and adored by the community because they will gain more followers. As well as that, they must be perceived as harmless to prove how unjust certain laws are. In addition, being well-educated and involved are important characteristics because they will be able to persevere and fight for the uneducated as well. After all, we must be thankful that these people helped bring peace to our world.